Okay, there's something I want to say about Negroland of the Arabs. Remember, this was written during the colonial era, and the author is clearly, basically aligned with the colonialists. So, a lot of things in there have to be taken with skepticism, which makes it interesting that on page 64 he says, Mansa Musa, on his return, conceived the idea of building himself a fine palace. Abu-l-Hasan sold him a model and erected the edifice, with plaster and all kinds of ornaments, for which he received 12,000 mithkals of gold. On medieval West Africa, from Arab scholars and merchants, page 95, he says, he plastered it on over and covered it with colored patterns so that it turned out to be the most elegant buildings. It caused the Sultan's great astonishment because of the ignorance of the art of building in their land, and rewarded Ishak for it with 12,000 mithkals of gold. You notice the difference between the two is that the older one, the one written in the 1840s, does not have him saying that the art of building was unknown in the Sudan, in Mali. And that's interesting. And I would have to think that Ibn Khaldun didn't say that. I would have to think that it was something that racists came up later, and it became part of the mainstream idea that Ibn Khaldun said that they were ignorant of the art of building. So it has to be taken into consideration that many translations are simply wrong. And I assume that Negroland of the Arabs, that book, there's a lot of mistranslations in it, or misrepresentations in that too. It's just that it evolved over time, and there became more and more mistranslations, and it's accepted by everyone. Now on trade, Pekames Sonnen shows us that the trade was across the Sahara. The trade across the Sahara was more important for North Africa than for Sudan. He wrote, this made the uninterrupted continuity of trade more important for North African rulers than their West African counterparts. The demand for salt, for which the Arabs bartered the gold in West Africa, is usually overemphasized in the historiography. Contrariwise, the Saharan rock salt was an expensive luxury product and available to the wealthy people only. Furthermore, it could be quite easily sustained by locally produced salt from plants and soil, whereas the North African rulers could not obtain gold for their coins elsewhere. So, in reality, the Sudanese, the people south of the desert, had the upper hand in these relations, and they had a huge amount of control over the Saharan trade. And this is supported in Timbuktu the Mysterious. He says how the Moroccans were never really that interested in hegemony over Africa south of the desert. And there's a proverb that goes, as tar cures the gall of a camel, so poverty finds its unfailing remedy in the Sudan. And that's a saying of North Africa, because Africa south of the desert is so rich. The people were so rich. So now we're going to go into the Moroccan invasion of Songhay. And first it's to be pointed out that there wasn't a great argument between these two. There wasn't a huge amount of tensions going on. This was something that was orchestrated by European powers. Note, the author of the book says that the salt mines, the Saharan salt mines, were nearer to Morocco than to the countries of Niger. But the Gaza, as we have seen, was the property of the Songhay. So there's property that's closer to Morocco that's owned by a ruler of Songhay. Now this is important. It goes on in the book Timbuktu the Mysterious. One of the rulers of Morocco wanted to claim that he has rights to this mine, and the Sudanese should pay for the salt coming from that mine. So one of the rulers of Songhay sends an army of Tuaregs north into Morocco. Evidence abounds that the Sudanese people basically had control over the Sahara. A lot more control of the Sahara than people give them credit for, and the Saharan trade. especially since they're owning and running mines that are closer to Morocco than to Niger. So one of the kings of Morocco eventually complained that it's closer to his realms, he should own it. He takes control of the mines, and this is so important because the people of the Sudan have the Songhay have their own mines. So just like Picamessona said, the importance of salt has been over-exaggerated, probably by racist colonialists or biased colonial writers that want to see the racial theories of making people of the South always being passive and dominated. So one thing I just want to leave with, the Moroccan invasion of Songhay had support from Queen Elizabeth, and even the language used in the invading army was Spanish. And it was not just mercenaries that were part of the army, there was also supplies, cannons. So that needs to be looked into, because this was to the advantage of these European nations.